Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here again to wrestle with, some pretty dense ideas, history, sources.
And try to make them clear, actionable.
Exactly. And today, history isn't just something static we look back on. We're treating it as a dynamic roadmap, a roadmap of transformation. We're doing a really extensive deep dive into the prophetic timeline, specifically the life and mission of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. But we're moving beyond just the usual dates and places.
Right, because the sources, when you really dig in, they push you to see this chronology differently. Like you said, an architecture of destiny.
Yeah, I like that term, architecture of destiny. It suggests deliberate phasing structure.
Precisely. A sequence of developments that, when you analyze them, reveal almost an institutional blueprint. Our mission here is to understand how that 23-year arc actually shaped things.
Shaped what, specifically? Moral clarity, governance.
Yes, all of that.
Yeah.
And the foundational structure of what became an enduring civilization. How do they go from this small persecuted group
to a state capable of talking about and enacting universal justice? That's the big question.
That is the core inquiry. We're aiming to pull out those, vital nuggets of knowledge, the things that show how this specific journey, the sequence of trials, treaties, transitions, wasn't accidental.
It profoundly shaped things.
Exactly. Shaped the spiritual and institutional DNA of Islam. And for you, the learner, the goal is to see this timeline as a prophetic syllabus.
Prophetic syllabus. Explain that a bit more.
Think of it like a leadership training program, one crafted meticulously over 2 decades. Every single stage, every setback, every strategic pivot, it offers a unique lesson.
A lesson applicable today.
Absolutely. Applicable to scaling any mission, really. Right. Whether you're launching a product, leading a movement, or trying to establish principled governance in some complex environment, it's a model of sustained intentional development.
Okay, I really appreciate that framing the prophetic syllabus. It helps organize what can feel like historical chaos into something understandable.
Yeah.
A curriculum, almost.
Right. And to guide us, we're using a framework that the sources themselves suggest, seeing the mission progress through 3 essential phases of growth.
What are those phases again?
Okay, first, you have the Meccan endurance phase. That's about 12 years of intense struggle, purification, defining the core vision and values under maximum pressure.
Right, the foundation.
Second, the Medinan action phase. About 8 years focused on governance, state building, policy, developing defensive systems, putting the vision into practice.
Making it real institutionally.
Exactly. And finally, the farewell completion phase. A short final period really dedicated to solidifying the legacy, institutionalizing those universal principles, and critically ensuring succession.
So endurance, action, completion.
If you can see the logic of those 3 transitions, you basically have the operational model.
That sets the scope perfectly.
Yeah.
And it highlights the sequence, doesn't it? You can't just jump to building a state.
No, not until the foundation is pure, the values solid.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting right at the beginning. The necessary preparation phase, the groundwork laid before any public mission began. So we begin with what we're calling the preparation phase. This covers, roughly the first 40 years of the Prophet's life, leading up to around 610 CE.
That's right. And the context of his birth in Makkah, around 570 CE, it's crucial, not just geographically.
You mean the lineage?
Yes, the sources really emphasize the genealogy, his descent from Prophet Abraham through his son Ismail.
Why is that stressed so much?
Well, it's more than just an impressive family tree, It's spiritual anchoring. It connects him directly to that primordial monotheistic tradition.
And specifically to the Kaaba itself, right?
Exactly, the founding of the Kaaba. So it places him firmly within the sacred and historical context of Arabia. He wasn't some outsider dropping in. He was deeply rooted in the very environment he aimed to reform.
But his credibility wasn't just inherited, was it?
Not at all. The sources strongly emphasize that it was forged through early adversity. He was orphaned, very young. Father died before he was born, mother soon after.
And that experience is highlighted.
Consistently. As instrumental in building resilience, self-reliance, and importantly, compassion for the vulnerable, qualities you absolutely need for a societal reformer. Non-negotiable.
And navigating that loss, that instability, it led to this incredible moral reputation.
Unmatched, really, in what was, let's be honest, a pretty cutthroat, tribal, commercial society.
He wasn't just seen as a nice guy.
No, he was the trustworthy person. That nickname stuck. Al-Amin, the trustworthy.
And there are specific stories about this, right? It wasn't just hearsay.
Oh, absolutely. The sources include anecdotes that prove it, like the famous incident with the Black Stone.
After the Kaaba was rebuilt, following a flood.
Yes. The tribal leaders were fiercely arguing about who gets the honor of putting the sacred Black Stone back in its corner. Things were about to erupt into violence, a very tense situation.
And he resolved it.
That anecdote is critical. It's like a stress test for his leadership before prophethood. They agreed the first person through the gate the next morning would decide.
And it was him.
It was Muhammad. And the accounts say everyone sighed in relief. Unanimously, they trusted his judgment completely, even then.
So how did he solve it?
It was brilliant, really. Simple but effective. He placed the stone on a cloth, had leaders from all the major tribes lift the corners together.
Sharing the honor.
Exactly, distributive justice. Then he himself set it into place. Everyone felt included, ownership restored, honor maintained, conflict diffused.
And this wasn't divine guidance yet.
No, this was earned wisdom, strategic thinking. It shows he established trust and competence as the baseline for his entire future mission, decades before the first revelation even came. That's foundational.
And building on that foundation of character, there was the partnership with Khadījah. May God be pleased with her.
Hugely important. The chroniclers are explicit. Their marriage was a partnership in faith and mission, foundational before the public call.
Her role sometimes gets downplayed, doesn't it?
It does, and it shouldn't. She was a successful businesswoman in her own right, independent, a pillar of stability socially and financially.
So she provided more than just emotional support.
Much more. Crucial economic security. That enabled him to undertake those spiritual retreats later in the Cave of Ḥirā, without immediate material worry.
And she was the first to believe, right, after the first revelation.
Instantly. When that first, frankly terrifying revelation occurred, she provided immediate, absolute affirmation. No hesitation. She anchored the initial shock of the mission.
So that partnership was essential before anything public could happen.
Proof positive. You need that foundational partnership before launching any kind of external revolution successfully.
And that stability, that partnership, it allowed for the next crucial step, the solitude.
Yes. The deliberate, sustained practice of spiritual retreat in the Cave of Ḥirā. This was in the final years just before the revelations began.
It wasn't just a holiday, was it?
Oh, definitely not. It was intense, focused introspection, not a sabbatical.
Why was this solitude so necessary?
The sources really emphasize this as the necessary inner purification. He spent long periods there, sometimes a whole month meditating, contemplating the problems in Makkah, wrestling with huge questions of purpose.
It's a leadership lesson we often skip, isn't it? Yeah. Rushing straight to action.
Exactly. If purification has to come before action, that poses a challenge for, say, modern organizations that feel pressured to launch immediately.
A potential bottleneck.
The prophetic syllabus suggests that if you launch before the vision is truly purified, your mission might fail. Or maybe worse, it succeeds but based on flawed, unexamined motives. The timeline mandates that internal work first.
That creates a real tension, though. How do you know if you're in necessary Meccan endurance, that phase 1 struggle, or if you're just failing in the market?
That's a great question. The syllabus seems to suggest the difference lies in the why. If you haven't done that deep internal work the era stage to define why you exist,
then you can't endure the inevitable pushback when you try to apply that vision socially.
Precisely. The endurance needed in phase 2 is only possible if the leader has built up that moral and emotional capital in isolation during phase 1. You can't sustain a high moral standard public mission if the leader hasn't cultivated those standards internally in solitude first.
So Ḥirā is the masterclass in preparation.
It confirms that great, sustainable revolutions, spiritual, institutional, whatever they have, to start with inner purification.
Okay, so phase 1 summary. 40 years of quiet forging. Character, resilience, trust, inner focus. Building the moral capital needed to withstand the coming storm.
Exactly. Ready for the crucible.
Right, into the crucible then. The Meccan Mission. Roughly 610 to 622 CE. This is where that purified vision meets the harsh reality of society.
Collision point. And it starts with what we call the awakening of divine literacy.
The first revelation. The command Iqra.
Yes, read or recite. The nature of that first command is incredibly profound.
How so?
It's not a military order. It's not a political decree. It's a command for knowledge, for communication. It immediately positions the entire movement not on force, but on thinking, learning, articulating truth.
Divine literacy.
An awakening of it, yes. But right after this intellectual launch, there's a critical strategic shift.
From private to public.
Exactly. Initially, the dawah, the call, the invitation was secret, done quietly among trusted individuals. That protected the small early community.
Makes sense. Vulnerable stage.
But eventually, the mission had to go public. And that public declaration immediately brought intense organized persecution from the ruling tribe, the Quraysh.
Okay, for a modern team or organization, this is like moving from your closed beta to the full public launch.
It really is. In the leadership syllabus, it's that moment your core values get stress tested by the market, by entrenched powers, by anyone who sees your innovation as a threat.
And the pushback was immediate and severe.
The sources meticulously detail it. Immense pressure. The Quraysh understood immediately that the message challenging idolatry, usury, social hierarchies was an existential threat to their power structure, their whole commercial and political system.
So let's dive into that endurance. It wasn't just name-calling, right? We're talking about serious pressure points, like the boycott in Shibiyaba on Al-Lib.
Oh, that was a sustained existential threat, not just social awkwardness. The Quraysh made a pact, hung it inside the Kaaba itself.
What did the pact say?
It essentially put the entire Muslim community and the Prophet's clan, Banu Hashim, under a total economic and social blockade, non-negotiable.
How long did that last?
Nearly 3 years. It was brutal.
What did the sanctions actually involve? How did people survive?
The community was forced into this desolate ravine outside Makkah, Shibi Abilib. The sanctions were absolute. No selling to them, no buying from them, no intermarriage, no social contact whatsoever.
Cut off from everything.
Completely. From all essential supplies. The accounts from the chroniclers are harrowing. They detail the resulting famine, people reduced to eating boiled leather hides, leaves off trees, just unimaginable hardship.
So as a leadership lesson,
It's about sustained endurance, surviving supply chain collapse. Their survival depended on extreme internal solidarity, incredible resilience against starvation, and, interestingly, some covert aid from a few sympathetic people outside the blockade who risked breaking it.
it must have forged intense commitment.
Absolutely. It purified the community's commitment. Only those with truly unwavering conviction could endure that kind of calculated hardship. It was designed to force a choice: faith or physical survival.
And just as they emerged from that physical ordeal, they hit the year of sorrow.
A devastating double blow in 619 CE, just crushing.
He lost his uncle, Abu Alib.
Yes, his main protector. Abu Ali wasn't a Muslim himself, but his tribal standing had shielded the Prophet politically from the worst threats of the Quraysh. He was the buffer.
And then his wife Khadījah passed away too.
Almost immediately after. His first believer, his greatest personal comfort, his source of financial stability, gone. His two main pillars of support, political and personal life, removed almost simultaneously.
That's about the deepest valley of suffering a leader can face. Personal loss, strategic loss, all at once.
It removes the external political shield and the internal emotional anchor. How does any mission survive that?
What did he do?
The narrative shows he didn't just despair. He kept seeking external support. That led directly to the difficult journey to MF.
He went looking for allies.
He traveled to this nearby city hoping for sanctuary, maybe a strategic alliance, but he was met with outright rejection. Worse than rejection, physical violence. Chased out of the city by a mob throwing stones.
So that strategy failed completely.
Painfully. And that's a necessary lesson for leaders too, right? Failure analysis. Sometimes you pursue a path, relocation, alliance, and it just doesn't work. It fails miserably.
So you have the boycott, profound personal loss, rejection, and it's just relentless suffering.
It is. But this whole downward trajectory culminates in a moment of profound spiritual reassurance. The event of Isrā and Miʿrāj.
The night journey and ascension. That seems like such a stark contrast. Why does that happen right at this absolute lowest point?
That's the fascinating juxtaposition. It seems to be the divine response precisely because all earthly means had failed.
When earthly support was gone.
Exactly. When Abu Alib's protection was gone, Khadījah's support was gone, the hope of Isrā is dashed. Then the spiritual connection is intensely heightened and reaffirmed through this absolute unique transcendent experience.
What's the lesson there for leadership?
It teaches a fundamental principle. Even when every earthly system, every human support structure has failed you, the connection to the larger purpose, to the divine source, it remains intact. In fact, it can strengthen.
It provided perspective, fuel to keep going.
Absolutely. The necessary spiritual fuel and a crucial perspective shift. It reminded the leader and the community that the mission is cosmic. It's bigger than just local politics or immediate hardship.
Okay, so looking back at the whole Meccan phase, 12 years, intense suffering, sacrifice, perseverance, the goal was maturing conviction.
Precisely. The core lesson is right there. Faith matures in pressure, not comfort. Comfort might test your management style, sure, but pressure tests your actual belief in the core vision.
And this phase defined the non-negotiables.
Patience, reliance on God, sacrifice, conviction. These values were crystallized under fire. You simply cannot move to the next phase, the governance phase, until these are proven capable of enduring the maximum stress test.
Which brings us logically to that monumental shift, the Hijra, the migration to Medina in 622 CE.
A decisive turning point. The sources frame it not just as travel, but as the Great Transition.
From persecution to policy.
Exactly, from a state of constant persecution, where survival was the daily focus, to a new era. An era demanding active policy development, the complex work of state building.
This is institutional strategy in action.
Absolutely. The Hijra signifies the mission, accepting that the Makkah environment was structurally impossible for growth. It fundamentally transitions the movement.
From purely spiritual
to a socio-political entity, with infrastructure, governance, self-determination. A community becoming a polity.
This is where that mission map idea really hits home.
Sure.
What do you have to leave behind to grow?
And they had to leave so much. Their homes, their ancestral city, the tribal protection system that had defined life in Arabia for centuries. It was a conscious, radical, strategic relocation.
A huge sacrifice.
Which immediately required robust institutional planning on arrival in Medina. They weren't arriving in a vacuum.
No, Medina had its own complexities. Warring tribes, existing Jewish communities.
Right. The Aus and Khazraj tribes, plus significant Jewish communities. Chaos was the enemy. So the very first priority was establishing a new social contract.
The Constitution of Medina. The sources really emphasize this document, don't they?
Highly emphasized, as revolutionary. The first pluralist social contract in the community's history, arguably in the region's history at that scale.
What made it pluralist?
It established the foundation of the new state not on a single religious identity, but on shared policy, law, and citizenship. It explicitly outlined rights, responsibilities, and critically mutual defense protocols for all groups in Medina.
Muslims, Jews, other residents.
Yes, forming a unified ummah, a community under a defined legal framework.
That immediate focus on institutional structure is striking.
It is. It shows the priority wasn't just spiritual expansion anymore. It was building mechanisms for internal arbitration, rules for external engagement, a united defense, making the nascent state one built on verifiable law, not just tribal custom or temporary consensus, a rapid institutional response.
Okay, so political and legal structure first. What about the economy? Social integration. You have these immigrants arriving, many penniless.
Right. Immediate necessity. The sources highlight the system of brotherhood, the pairing of the muhajirin, the emigrants, with the anar, the helpers or residents of Medina,
as a demonstration of economic solidarity.
And community rebuilding in real time. And this wasn't just, a symbolic gesture or a small charity drive.
What were the actual mechanics? How did it work? Because that's a key lesson in resource management during rapid growth or crisis.
It was an institutional command, essentially. The Anar were instructed to take a muhajir as a brother or sister in faith, and the accounts are astonishing.
How so?
The Anar willingly, enthusiastically shared everything. Their land, their homes, their businesses, their date orchards, often literally splitting their wealth down the middle and insisting the immigrants take it freely.
That's incredible integration.
It established an immediate wealth redistribution and integration system. It allowed the new arrivals to get back on their feet economically, not as dependents, but as partners who could quickly start contributing to the new society.
So it showed the faith was practical.
Eminently practical. Capable of solving huge socioeconomic displacement problems right away, ethically. And it cemented loyalty, built a self-sustaining infrastructure almost overnight.
So internal structure stabilized political, legal, economic. Then came the external threats.
Inevitable, which necessitated conflict. And here we review the key defensive battles, Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, not just as events, but as case studies.
Case studies in strategy and moral discipline.
Let's treat them like that. Badr, the first major encounter. It's the initial stress test. A small, poorly equipped Muslim force faces overwhelming odds against the Meccans.
And they won.
Relying on strategic positioning, courage, and absolute faith. It proved their capability, their competence under fire against a materially superior enemy. Big morale boost.
But then comes Oud,
Yeah.
which offers a very different lesson.
Oh, Oud is perhaps the most crucial lesson for any organization after initial success. It's about failure analysis and the high cost of indiscipline.
What happened there?
The Muslim forces initially gained the upper hand, but a key contingent of archers, specifically placed to guard a strategic mountain pass.
They left their post.
They abandoned their position against clear orders. Why? They were motivated by wanting to collect the spoils of war from the seemingly defeated enemy.
And that created an opening.
A devastating opening. The Meccan cavalry exploited it, launched a counterattack, and reversed the victory into a painful, costly defeat. Many casualties, including close companions.
So the lesson for a leader.
One breach of discipline, even if motivated by greed or short-term gain, can completely undermine years of hard-won success. And importantly, the post-mortem analysis, according to the sources, was immediate and focused internally.
On the breakdown of the operational plan.
Exactly, not on blaming external factors. That capacity for institutional self-correction, however painful, is vital for long-term health.
Okay, Khadījah proved courage, Uat taught discipline. What about Khandak, the Battle of the Trench?
Khandak, or the Battle of the Confederates, was different again. This was an existential siege. A huge confederation of almost all the major Arab tribes united with the Meccans to wipe out Medina entirely.
How do they respond to that scale of threat?
With innovative strategy. This is where the Prophet accepted the counsel of Salman al-Farsi, a companion of Persian origin.
Who suggested digging a trench?
A massive defensive trench around the exposed northern side of the city. This was a Persian military tactic, completely unfamiliar in traditional Arabian warfare.
And it worked.
It completely stalled the siege. It neutralized the advantage of the enemy's cavalry, their main strength. The siege dragged on for weeks. Morale collapsed among the Confederates, and eventually they dispersed.
What does that show leadership-wise?
Capacity for innovation under pressure, and crucially, the willingness to listen to and incorporate non-traditional, even foreign expertise. Strategic openness, utilizing diverse talent.
So pulling together this whole 8-year Medinan phase, the core analysis seems to be institutions rooted in justice are what sustain faith and practice.
Exactly. When the system, like the Constitution of Medina, aims for fairness for everyone, and when the leadership demonstrates strategic competence and moral integrity in defense, the institution thrives. The Medinan phase is the engine room, where character translates into policy and structure.
Okay, moving into the final stretch of the mission. The last 2 years, roughly 630 to 632 CE, the focus shifts again, right?
Right.
From defense and building to consolidation.
Consolidation, yes, and setting the universal standard. This era really kicks off with a masterclass in strategic patience-yielding success, the Treaty of Khadījah.
That was actually a couple of years earlier, 628 CE, but it sets the stage for this final phase.
Precisely. It's often debated historically because the terms look bad for the Muslims initially. They were traveling to Mecca for the minor pilgrimage, the Umrah, but were blocked by the Quraysh just outside the city.
And the treaty they negotiated seemed like a climb down.
On the surface, yes, it must have been incredibly difficult for the companions. After years of fighting and sacrifice, they had to agree to things like postponing their pilgrimage for a whole year.
And that clause about returning escapees.
Right. Agreeing to return any Muslim who fled Mecca to Medina, but the Quraysh didn't have to reciprocate if someone fled Medina to Mecca. It looked very one-sided, like bowing to Quraysh demands.
There must have been internal dissent.
Enormous dissent, real frustration. But the Prophet, according to the sources, saw the long game. He understood the strategic value.
What was the value?
By accepting this truce, even with its tough conditions, he secured 10 years of official peace. And the sources highlight that as the breakthrough.
Peace provided advantages.
2 critical ones. First, Mecca, by signing a treaty, formally recognized the Muslim community in Medina as a legitimate political entity, a peer, not just some rebellious faction anymore. Huge diplomatic win.
And second,
the peace itself. It allowed the message of Islam to spread peacefully, unhindered by constant warfare and skirmishes. Vast numbers of tribes across Arabia who might have been hesitant before now felt safer to engage with the message, and many converted.
So strategic patience over immediate gratification.
It's a masterclass. Trading the immediate emotional win, forcing their way into Mecca that year for long-term structural success. political recognition, and the freedom for the message to grow exponentially. Sometimes what looks like a compromise is actually the biggest leap forward.
And that strategic patience pays off just 2 years later.
Dramatically. It directly paved the way for the conquest of Makkah in 630 CE. The Quraysh eventually violated the treaty, giving the Muslims the justification to march on the city.
And this event is significant
Because
because
it defined mercy and power. This wasn't a typical conquest. It was virtually bloodless.
he entered the city with overwhelming force, right?
Right.
They couldn't resist.
Overwhelming force. Total victory was assured. But instead of revenge for nearly 2 decades of persecution, torture, exile, warfare, he granted a general amnesty
To almost everyone, even his worst enemy.
to nearly all the citizens of Makkah, including those who had been his fiercest, most personal antagonists. It was stunning.
That must have completely changed the dynamic.
It institutionalized a new rule for victory, completely contrasting with the historical norm of conquerors engaging in mass executions, enslavement, looting.
The message being,
That this mission isn't about personal power or settling old scores, it's about establishing justice and reconciliation. By showing mercy when holding all the cards, absolute power, the leadership won the hearts. It secured loyalty through compassion, not fear. That act solidified the moral integrity of this final phase.
okay, so Makkah is peacefully integrated. What follows briefly before the end?
There's further consolidation. Some resistance from tribes nearby led to the Battle of Hunain, another test, and the expedition to Tabuk near the Byzantine border, consolidating the northern frontiers. But the narrative arc is clearly moving towards the culmination.
Which is the final synthesizing act, the universal message delivered during the farewell Hajj in 632 CE.
This is it, the conclusion of the syllabus. The farewell sermon, delivered on the plains of Arafat during his final pilgrimage. It's like the ultimate quality assurance check on the entire 23-year mission.
The final declaration of principles.
Synthesizing everything. The resilience learned in Makkah, the justice established in Medina, all brought together in this final address to tens of thousands of people.
What were the absolute core messages from that sermon that define the enduring legacy, the takeaways?
The sources consistently pull out 3, maybe 4, transformative declarations. First, reaffirming the absolute sanctity of human life, property, and honor, setting that baseline inviolability.
Foundational ethics.
Second, the definitive abolition of harmful pre-Islamic tribal practices, specifically calling out usury, interest-based economics, and the cycles of revenge based on old blood feuds, wiping the slate clean for economic and social justice.
And third,
And this is perhaps the most revolutionary universal declaration, the explicit shattering of all ethnic and racial hierarchies.
he stated it directly.
Unequivocally. "O people, verily your Lord is one and your Father is one. All humankind is from Adam and Eve." And then the famous line, "There is no superiority of an Arab over a non-Arab, nor of a non-Arab over an Arab,
Nor of a white person over a black person, nor a black person over a white person.
except by piety and good action." That's the essence.
And that single measure he gave for determining worth, taqwa.
Yes, taqwa. Often translated as piety or fear of God, but it's deeper. It's consciousness of God.
But not just passive piety.
No, an active consciousness of God that has to drive your actions, your policies. It means the only true measure of value, whether for an individual or an institution, is the commitment to justice, integrity, righteousness, regardless of your race, your wealth, your origin.
So this final sermon seals the legacy. It tears down those hierarchies, ethnic, economic, ensuring the institution, the community, remains fundamentally egalitarian, universally applicable, not just for one tribe, one place, one time.
That's the capstone, universal justice as the final output of the entire prophetic syllabus.
Okay, we've walked through the timeline in detail, examined the context, the key events, the lessons learned along the way. Now let's bring it back to that core idea we started with. His history needs to be lived, not just memorized.
Right. How does this historical timeline become a practical, analytical framework for you, the listener? How can you use it to evaluate your own journey or the development of any organization you're part of or leading?
Can we really map it directly onto modern life?
I think we absolutely can. We can draw a direct and I think powerful parallel between those 3 prophetic phases and the stages of modern organizational growth or even personal development.
Okay, let's really flesh out that 3-phase corporate parallel, focusing on the actions, the risks, the takeaways for each stage. Let's start with phase 1, the Meccan phase.
Defined by vision and values. In today's terms, this is your startup phase, your ideation phase.
So what's the focus here?
It's like your minimum viable product, but instead of a product, it's your minimum viable belief system. Resources are scarce, opposition is likely high. Your absolute focus has to be on inner resilience, defining your core beliefs clearly, and enduring that initial rejection or struggle.
Like the early Muslims facing persecution.
Exactly. The major risk here is giving up on the core vision too soon because of pressure. Or, maybe worse, compromising your fundamental moral integrity just to get some short-term funding or acceptance.
So success isn't measured by market share yet.
Not at all. Your only real metric for success in this phase is the unshakable conviction and character of the founding team. That Al-Amin principle, trustworthiness, integrity, is the core pure.
And you raised that challenging question earlier. How do you know if it's necessary endurance or just market failure?
And the answer, drawing from the sources, seems to be about where the failure is coming from. Is it external pressure, persecution, boycott, market conditions? Or is it internal, a collapse of your own core values, a lack of discipline, like those archers at Oud?
If the values hold, you endure. If they break, the mission fails from within.
That seems to be the lesson. Okay, moving to phase 2. The Medinan phase, this corresponds to system and structure. The organizational parallel is
Scaling up, rapid growth, the organization phase.
precisely. Once those foundational values are solid, tested under pressure, you must rapidly build governance. This is where you develop clear policies, your Constitution of Medina. You establish your operational infrastructure, your Brotherhood of Muhajirin and Ansar, your resource allocation system.
And defense.
And you create defensive strategies against competitors or threats, your Badu Oud Kandak moments. The focus shifts dramatically from just personal charisma and survival to institutional sustainability, process, compliance.
What's the main risk in this scaling phase?
Growth without structure, or growth with unjust structure. If you expand rapidly but your policies aren't fair, if you create internal inequalities, that will eventually fracture the entire institution from within.
So the Medinan phase teaches that structure isn't bureaucracy for its own sake.
No, it's essential. Structure prevents mission drift. It prevents chaos. Effective, just policy is what allows the institution to handle internal conflicts and external threats while maintaining fairness for everyone involved.
Okay, and finally, phase 3, the farewell phase, the era of sustainability and succession. The legacy phase, in modern terms.
Right. Here, the primary task is institutionalizing the values, making absolutely sure the vision, the core principles, will outlive the founder or the founding team.
How do you do that?
You focus on achieving genuine universal equality in practice. That's the message of the farewell sermon. You establish frameworks that are self-sustaining, universally applicable. The leader's focus shifts towards succession planning, mentoring future leaders, and embedding ethical benchmarks deep into the organization's culture.
And the challenge or risk here?
Complacency, maybe arrogance, having achieved success, maybe even power, like the conquest of Makkah.
The temptation is to become exclusive, to forget the founding principles.
Exactly, to become unjust. The final sermon is an explicit warning against precisely that. It mandates that true, lasting success is measured by the universal application of mercy, justice, and that core principle of taqwa.
That structural mapping, Meccan Mission, Medinan systems, farewell legacy, it's a really useful tool for self-assessment.
It forces you, the listener, to reflect. Where is my mission, my project, my organization right now? Am I still in the struggle phase, the Meccan phase? Wrestling with core values, just trying to survive?
Or am I in the Medinan stability phase, trying to build effective systems, manage growth, maybe fight off competitors?
Or have I reached the farewell service phase, where the focus needs to be on scaling the impact ethically, ensuring sustainability, institutionalizing the legacy for the long term?
And crucially, respecting the sequence.
Absolutely. The timeline proves you have to earn the right to expand Medina through proven character, Mecca, and just governance before you can truly claim a lasting ethical legacy. Farewell. Skipping steps usually means sacrificing sustainability or integrity for speed.
Okay, let's try to synthesize the key takeaways from this whole deep dive. What's the bottom line?
For me, it's that this prophetic timeline is an incredibly comprehensive blueprint. It meticulously balances faith and action, patience and planning, purification and policy at every single strategic step.
It's not just one thing, it's holistic.
The ultimate holistic leadership model, really. The Meccan lessons. They teach resilience, character fortification. You need that first.
The Medinan lessons.
They teach governance. They show that effective, just structure is absolutely necessary for survival, stability, and managing growth ethically.
And the Pharaoh phase.
That teaches legacy. It confirms that universal equality, justice, and mercy aren't just nice add-ons. They are the essential hallmarks of enduring, meaningful success. History isn't just a record of the past. It's a practical field guide for building a better future. #outro.
Well, this has been an incredibly detailed journey. We've gone from the intense internal focus of the Cave of Ḥirā all the way to that unifying, universal declaration of humanity on the plains of Arafat.
It's quite an arc.
It really is.
Right.
And I feel we've gained significant depth by looking at this source material not just as history, but through this active lens of institutional development, strategic patience, moral leadership.
Seeing it as that living syllabus.
Exactly. And to wrap up, we want to challenge you, the listener, to carry this framework forward actively.
Right. Don't just memorize the sequence of events. Apply it. We challenge you first to identify which prophetic event or phase truly mirrors where you are right now.
In your work, your community, your personal growth.
Is it that difficult journey to Ave, facing rejection? Is it the sudden need for structure, like the Constitution of Medina? Is it the strategic patience of Arabia? Find your parallel.
And
Then, the specific action challenge. Create a mission map inspired by the Hijra.
a mission map.
Yeah. Define clearly what you must consciously leave behind. Old habits, old systems, outdated ways of thinking. What needs to be shed for you to fully grow and transition into the next phase of your mission, whatever that is.
Because growth requires that kind of radical relocation of focus, just like the Hijra did.
It often does. And finally, maybe use the principles from the farewell sermon, especially those declarations on equality and taqwa, as your ongoing gut check.
Your ethical compass.
Exactly. A continuous point of reflection to ensure that whatever system you build, whatever policy you make, whatever action you take, is genuinely rooted in universal justice and integrity. It's about moving toward your destiny, your goals, but with profound ethical intention.
A powerful way to frame it. Thank you for diving deep with us today.
Always a pleasure.
We will see you next time on The Deep Dive.